So, talking about death, um, because I feel a lot of curiosity about for your point of view when it comes to what you, how you faced that stage in your life. Because when we both have this had this kind of experience at different ages.
You were 30 and I was 15, so
Exactly.
like on a split.
Exactly, and it's that gives a completely different point of view and perspective. Uh, the fear we could feel or not feel based on the experience we were about to face. Well, in your case, you knew you were going towards that experience.
Yeah, I chose it.
You chose
I
it.
I chose it. I had a lack of perspective on how my life could be bright in the future.
Yeah.
I just didn't see the light at all. So once I kind of made my mind up, I was like, well, I'm gonna just sign off, changed my frame, and I didn't expect much, which was interesting. So when I arrived to that place, I was welcoming it, and it felt very warm, and I didn't face that level of fear that I know, like for example, that you had, because you didn't choose that path. You didn't decide to have your heart attack in a sense. Yeah.
It happened. It just happened, and that's why I'm so interested in what, because the conception of death is very, it's a taboo. It's a kind of a taboo in society, and people fear death.
Yeah.
And we don't, as a society, we don't realize it's just part of the circle of life, right? But since you chose it when you were such a young guy, what was the feeling you had as you were approaching that event?
It was feelings of warmth, reception, compassion. I was smiling, you know.
You were smiling.
I was smiling in the moments before, and however you receive that, me smiling, I was just completely at one with my being.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that I felt a huge relief, because now, pondering back, looking back onto it, I'd built up so much existential fear and existential coping mechanisms, and they were gone because I knew that physically I wasn't going to be around anymore. So all of my fears left. Crazy. And so I just felt the lightness. It's like I had received an hour of deep tissue massage without even anybody, being around. So I felt relief. Yeah.
Because you had a bag full of fear, you think?
It was fear. It was a lot of ideas and images that
from
I was
the past.
holding on to from the past. Yeah. So I had a large luggage case.
Yeah. That's because we tend to think that the younger we are, the less heavy our bags are, and sometimes it's kind of the opposite. The less ready we are to face that kind of luggage.
Exactly, because it also comes down to experience as well, because if you've experienced more and you know the groove of things, then you have more of an arsenal or more tools to use. But if you have few tools, then it becomes difficult. But and how did you feel when you came to when your heart stopped and you was rushed to the hospital? And
it's very interesting because that feel in the beginning, I was fucking scared, man. I remember I couldn't really connect. The moment they said your heart is you have a 95-year-old man heart, because I didn't have a heart attack itself. It was like an electrical blockage, and so my whole body collapsed. And when you're facing that situation, when you're training and actually doing Ironmans and crazy sports, you never imagine that this could happen to you. So you face lots of fears. And I remember that those fears were just conditionings from my past, that all of a sudden I was facing them, and they were losing sense. So all the fears that I used to have all of a sudden disappeared, because I entered after reliving these fears, I entered a kind of a peaceful place where I surrendered. And by surrendering myself, I could, it sounds weird, I could enjoy death because it's kind of enjoyable.
Kind of like me smiling as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
But that was once you let go, or was it prior?
I had to let go.
Yeah.
I had to let go because I was too attached to many things. Right. And here comes the conception of what fear is, right? Yeah. Because we have this kind of psychological fear we as a society we live in, fearing all the our jobs,
our ideas, our ego in a sense,
exactly,
our sense of self,
exactly,
our personality, and then we have the primal fear, which is like you see a snake, a poisonous snake in front of you, you better get out of there, or
one is a bit more existential, and the other one is a bit more survival. You know, like of course, we need fear in our lives. I think fear is a very effective tool when it comes to survive in nature, when it comes to when you don't want to be eaten by an animal.
And it's very intelligent as well.
Exactly. But there's the other fear that we created, especially in the last century, because it's a modern fear, more related to our existence, let's say, and the way we are, the way we live, who we are. All these kind of fears of our existential origin and where we're going, what am I doing here, and at some point it's good and bad because fear limits you a lot. And that's my experience.
That's kind of the thing that also goes a little bit into a more holistic sense, because on one end, on our nervous system, because on one end you might see a snake in front of you or a lion, and on the other end you might see a family member, your child, your wife, your girlfriend, your parents, and you're met with the same neurological fear.
Yeah.
And that's when fear becomes from intelligent to actually becoming something that stunts our growth as human beings and experiencing life to the full potential. Because really what happens when we're fearful, we limit our experience. And from the primal sense of it, or the survival sense, it's good because you don't want to experience getting bit by a snake.
Yeah.
But from our existential space, sometimes it's good to have honest, difficult, fearful conversations with the people that are closest to you and around you, because that aids for a larger spectrum of intimacy or compassion, and your experience grows deeper and wider as a result. And I think that even though, I was half the age of what you were when we both had our experiences, we've both come to the same conclusion in how we meet fear in our everyday life. And
it probably opens all the fears at the same time, because all of a sudden you feel like, where do I belong?
Right.
Because you've been there and you're here, you're back, but you felt so good there.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're facing again all of the things that you were not ready to face in the past. And maybe that's why you chose that direction, and my body chose that direction, because somehow I didn't choose for it, but my subconsciousness chose that way.
Yeah.
And there was a reset point. Yeah. You're back in life and you're like, what the fuck do I do now? Because
we both went to depressive episodes.
Exactly.
And deep existential questioning episodes, and very deep levels of loneliness as well, because it's not every day that you don't walk out on the street and see people talking about this subject, and it's quite so it does become quite isolated, becomes quite lonely, and even in this process of us starting this project is the fact of sharing our very own fears, because the only way that you're really gonna, because if you have a poisonous snake in front of you, well, you get the hell out of there. But our existential fears are literally programmed or ingrained or conditioned or chosen behavior. So we need to figure out how to release that behavior.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, because existential fear is that part that I think we should not let that fear rule our lives. That's the thing that and we tend to let fear take over most of the time. And we nowadays we're living very difficult times, and people are full of fear. That's why I think it's a very important, because we're on this process of talking it out. We're also healing ourselves, because we need to share, and we want to share this thing with people and help other people, and grow in the future, talking to other people with similar experiences. But in my opinion, my conclusion, and I want to hear yours as well, is that death made me realize that most of the fears that I was basing my life on were just bullshit. And that, of course, I needed to keep a certain amount of fear to survive and to take right decisions, because it's part of the reptilian brain that makes you really thrive and move forward. But at the same time, I chose not to be ruled by my existential fears, and especially with my family, with my friends, with my things that I didn't want to say, just in case what they're going to think about it, how they're going to react. I was just projecting. I found all this bullshit in my brain that I just got rid of it, and I feel much better. I can live in a different way with less limitations. And I don't know if you had a similar experience with that, but
definitely similar. The journey of becoming and entering that space is the large challenge of actually having to face those things, because the way we as a society, generally speaking, compensate with fear is by excess amount of safety or pleasure or indulgence. That's why we have spiking levels of indulgence in alcohol, sex, porn, drugs, sugar, and a wide range of things. And for me, and my point, like, sugar was like a main thing. But to go to the question, I see it in the same way as you. It allowed me to rid myself of all those things. And at the end of the day, like, now we're saying is bullshit, but also there's answers in each one of those things that we've been holding on to. So it's not just like, just go like, I'm just gonna throw it away, because you can do that, but then you're not growing wise of why they were there in the first place. And we all have our individual collection of cards that are each, labeled with the things that we've been carrying around. And if you have those in your deck of cards, then you're using them, you're playing those cards. And I think that by becoming aware, going through that experience as well, and also not staying in that loop, because you haven't had those things. Well, you haven't had your heart problem come back. I haven't had my depression come back to that level. And I think a lot of that goes to just, facing it, changing those cards out that you have as part of your life deck, one by one, but also realizing why they were there in the beginning. And then you can go out, just there's an infinite array of ways that you can live your life. And then it's all like, how do I continue moving forward with all of what I've learned? And then becoming wise as well. And then, which we'll talk about in the future, then comes the part of, being in a healthy state of mind, putting things into your body that are aiding the dream of becoming a human being that isn't addicted to any sort of impulse or dopamine or certain images that we keep trapping ourselves into. that actually bring us further away from what we dream of.
Yeah, and I think it's very, for me at least, it's very important because I would like to finish with a little bit of light, you know, in this conversation.
Let's do that.
I think people,
death and fear.
yeah, man, it's just so. I understand that sometimes when you, I mean, there's some things, as I told you before, that I don't. Sometimes I'm watching some kind of videos and I don't click there because I know it's going to open something that's going to hurt.
Yeah.
So it's going to talk about something I need to work on. But fear is something we clearly worked on already. And if I could give a recommendation to people, because fear will always be there. You will always face fear, but share it with other people.
Right.
That's something we don't do. We eat our own fears, right? Because we fear sharing our fears, thinking too much about what other people will think about our fears. Mm-hmm. They will laugh about it. They will think that, is it serious? I'm just creating this in my mind. Is this fear real? Just talk it out. That's what helped me the most, because every time, and I use you a lot to share my personal life, and you also talk to me, because we all need people to one day say, hey, man, I don't feel good today. And I need some extra help regarding this or that because I don't see the way out. And sharing, man, I think it's a beautiful conclusion in my own experience, you know.
Right. So that's what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be sharing, caring, and sharing talks on the internet. Yeah. Sharing
thoughts about sometimes difficult subjects and raw conversations that I don't see much out there on the internet. I see too many pretty things, but I see too little real stuff.
Yeah.
So let's start talking about the real stuff, and I think we're gonna enjoy it a lot.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Bye.